I let my Instagram followers choose what book we're going to review today, and they chose this work of art. It's Fear by Robert Peckham. And just look at that front cover. 10 out of 10 for the front cover. My biggest fear when reading this book was just breaking the spine of the book or bending the pages when I wanted to bookmark where I was last reading. It was a frightening experience in itself. But is the book any good? Well, I underestimated it. I thought that this was going to be an easy, breezy read. Any book that says it's going to cram the world's history into a few hundred pages is surely going to be quite breezy. French Revolution, a couple of pages here, the plagues, a couple of pages there. I thought, yeah, I can do this. But no, this was not an easy, breezy read. It took me a month. I was taking notes when I read it, and I found it to be a lot more dense than I'd first expected. But more for me, for reading a history book by a historian and thinking that it was going to be easy. The first big question is the book worth reading? And I think that depends on what you want to get from a book about fear. This book is good. It's got lots of interesting quotes. It's got lots of things that make you go, Where is this on the dry meter, the dense meter? How dense and dry is this book? The bibliography is quite thick for the book. I mean, that's the bibliography. And I think it goes to show how hard the writer tries to showcase their talents in research. This is not a book to read at night time. Guillotines, plagues, AIDS, terrorism, AI. It's not something that will make you feel relaxed when you go to bed at night, unless you watch my TikTok videos, of course, in which case you are well and truly desensitized to the chaos of the world. I came away from the book thinking very differently about the way media and politics is presented in contemporary culture. The book's main political argument really is that fear is used to control. The writer says one of the book's aims has been to highlight the political nature of fear. Peckham argues that fear has shaped our government from fears of God, fears of the state, fears of the monarchy, fears of mob rule, and this threat of fear is used to hang over people throughout society and keep them in a straight line. It even references Steve Bannon in the book, Trump's former White House chief, who says fear gets people to the polls. There's a really interesting passage in the book. It talks about Thomas More's Utopia, written in, I think, 1516, roughly. It was a satirical work of a utopia where healthcare is free, where there's no money, and people are really happy. And it's supposed to be this satirical, idealized world of paradise. But even Thomas More says that one of the big things that makes the cogs work in this fantasy utopia is fear. And he says in this story that people don't necessarily fear physical prosecution that much. So prison is an off-putting thing, but people still go out and commit crimes. And it was in his belief in this fantasy story that the only way to keep people in line and to truly scare them was to create the fear of eternal damnation, this fear of God looking over. But he also argues that a religious fear only works so far. He argued that religious fear can be motivational. It can make you a better person. And this is something the book goes on to argue more about as well. Fear is not just something to terrify you at night. It is also something to motivate you in life, to make you not just a better person, but also to survive. So, for example, if you live in a dodgy neighborhood, you might lock your door before you go to bed. That's a very rational fear that someone might come in and break into your house. And it's the fear that makes you take the precaution of locking your door at night so that you stay safe. But Thomas More is also arguing in Utopia that fear on a deeper level of things like starvation or not having somewhere to live, that then becomes a problem. That is not a motivator. That can break down a character. It can break down society. And there's a lot of talk in this book about society because fear is used to control crowds, especially during outbreaks of plague and cholera. Human behavior in these historical reports is a fresh reminder of the 2020 pandemic and how people bought into a lot of myths or a lot of conspiracy theories. And it always kind of zones in on this point of fear makes us want to blame someone. The writer suggests that fear reflects a herd instinct, a tendency for individuals to act as one when they enter a crowd. There's also a really interesting connection with the idea of the sublime. The sublime is kind of described as something where you look at something in nature and it's just so awe-inspiring but so terrifying that you can't put it into words. This kind of disorientating, terrifying experience of looking at nature's vastness and not being able to comprehend or understand it. And why are those two connected? Why are politics and the sublime connected in this book? Well, the book says that this can be applied to crazy world leaders and dictators. There's the idea that the sublime, when you look out onto a valley and you feel terrified, it's making us realize our limited power. We don't have any power in the world. We're just like a little insect in a stream of water spinning, and we recognize our limits. And that is also what dictators and world leaders can make us feel like as well, especially if they separate themselves from the real world. Edmund Burke in 1757 claimed that dictator governments that trade upon fear keep their ruler away from the public eye. It's to create the distance and let the imagination run wild of what terror the government can do. Fear is also in US elections, as the book points out. It references the Daisy Girl advert, where the advert is pretty simple. It says, if you vote for my opponent in this election campaign, that is a ticket to nuclear annihilation. The book about the recession is really interesting. It talks about how we have recessions every 10 years or so, and they are essentially determined by fear. Once a crowd becomes consumed by the idea of fear, for example, the idea of the economy collapsing, 2008 style recession, or just Donald Trump's tariffs, it can spread like wildfire, and the markets quite literally get spooked. Learning value, what will you learn from the book? I think you'll learn quite a lot. If you're a teacher or if you're a student, this is super valuable. To me as a content creator, this was also super resourceful. If you're just a casual reader and you want to learn some stuff and open your eyes a bit more and experience the world through a different narrative, I would also recommend this book. And if you think the media is just too scary and sometimes you can't open a newspaper or watch the news without feeling disturbed, I would again recommend that you read this book, because it actually makes you realize that these deep, troubling, dark, dangerous times that we feel we're a part of, they're nothing new. The media and people have been scrambling and panicking and getting frightened for generations upon generations. When you look at the contemporary concerns of the past, for example, when telephones first came along, many people thought they would explode. You see all this and you realize that a lot of those fears are, while rational for the time, they don't make a lot of sense in today's world. They're quite disposable. And some of that may apply to fears today. You see why the media tries to create so much fear and anxiety, why things are so sensational, because it's always part of a way to control. Now, this is just one narrative the book offers. It's not necessarily how I view things 100%, but it's a really interesting way of viewing the world. And it might just detach you from the media a bit more when you read it. It's a good book, even if you don't want to read all of it and you get bored, and you might get bored. I got bored at points when reading it. It's a great book to stick on your bookshelf because the front cover is super interesting. People are going to think that you're really intellectual for having this little historical book on your bookshelf. And if anything, the book cover is a conversation piece. I'm obsessed with a book cover. I need to get a poster of it or something like that. Anyway, that's my book review. I don't know if I should give it a rating. I think it depends on what kind of reader you are and what that you want from the book. I'll give it a 6. It was something I finished. I feel like a book needs to be at least a 5 out of 10 for me to finish it, but I barely finished it. I was kind of skimming towards the end. I don't think it's breathtaking and beautiful as the quotes on here say, but it is, as The Economist points out, fairly compelling. What book should I read next? I'm happy to do more reviews, even if these videos don't get a lot of views, because I enjoy it. I enjoy reading. I'm going to put some suggestions in the comments. I'm going to narrow it down a little bit, and then if you can let me know what book you'd like to see reviewed, I would love to read it and report back to you. Thank you for your support. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you soon. Take care.